My name's Steve Baggy. I'm co-founder at Green Park, and our business is all around executive talent. And we're here today in this panel to talk around leadership and talent within the retail and consumer sector. And it's probably never a more important time to talk about leadership and talent in this sector because of all the changes that we're hearing today, the change from the consumer around business models. In essence, we're trying to change retailers from old models to new models, and that raises really big questions around the types of leaders we need to go through that change as well. So we're a bit behind schedule, so I think we've got about 15 minutes, so we're going to have to get through this relatively quickly. So first of all, let's introduce the great panel we've got. Nigel, do you want to?
My name is Nigel Turner. I've just left the Argos organisation after a 15-month piece of work on the executive committee as the HR director. That's been an interesting journey. I cut my teeth in retail, 15 years in Sainsbury, Kingfisher, and in between those two things worked on some big legacy people transformations, including the Northern Rock stabilisation and the people agenda of Royal Mail's privatisation. That's hopefully what I bring.
Sandra?
Hello, I'm Cassandra, co-founder of Propercorn. We sell popcorn, and we are the fastest growing snack brand across Europe.
And I'm Sarah Cleary from Selfridges Group. I'm the head of group talent across the group, which comprises Selfridges & Co in the UK, Brown Thomas and Arnott's in Ireland, Dubai & Corp in the Netherlands, and Holt Renfrew in Canada.
Thank you. So if we start off by looking at, I think, the pivotal role, the role of the CEO within traditional retail businesses. We recently did a survey with True Start and the World Retail Congress, and we looked at the makeup of current CEOs in the largest business in this country, and by far they were dominated by background by people from store operational discipline background and grown up through store ops into CEO roles. And I guess the question is, now if that's the background, and considering the challenges that we have now going forwards, if they're not the right skills, what sort of skills do we need for that leadership role? Nigel?
Well, if I take Argos as the example, Terry Duddy, who might be in the room, hired John Walden 4 years ago as CEO into the Argos organisation. John probably is that hybrid in terms of his previous big organisational experience was in Best Buy, the US electrical retailer who, if you know them well enough, had a war with Amazon for a number of years. So John led the digital agenda there in Best Buy. He was the HR director for a period, and then went on a successful number of startup operations. So with that qualification, John was invited and accepted the CEO role in the Argos digital journey and digital transformation, and he's held that role and moved on to the Home Retail Group CEO role, which, if you read current events, now disposing of Homebase is Argos PLC and is, I think, the quarry of Mike Coop and Sainsbury's. So John, in terms of the CEO DNA, would represent for that business, in my experience, a good example of the sort of rounded skill sets that this debate probably is focusing on. Steve's question concentrates on probably the red zone, which is the capabilities and DNA of the CEO. Slightly outside that area, what would I bring to the debate? Argos, a legacy retailer, last peak, last Christmas, crossed that important threshold. More than 50% of its turnover is now online, and it smashed 1 billion sales on mobile devices in the run-up to peak as well. So it has made some significant headway on that legacy transformation towards a digital retailer. Bertrand Bodson has spearheaded the digital part of Argos. So echoes of our previous panel's conversations. Argos has now got a 300-strong digital army based in Victoria, not Shoreditch. And you know, those two factors, the digital capability, Walden's leadership, and Bertrand Bodson, ex-Amazon, ex-EMI, very different skill sets, very different attitude, challenging possibly the inertia of introspection in traditional UK retailers. I could go on, but in terms of the CEO question and the CEO DNA, those are probably two issues I bring to the debate.
And Sarah, how are you seeing leadership skills starting to change and transform from the new world?
I think we may not have been part of the survey, but if I look at our managing directors across all of our different banners, we've got one from HR, one from finance, two from buying, and one from corporate finance. And I think for us, certainly when we think about succession for that MD population, and we take it very seriously, all of our MDs have actually been promoted from within our organisations. For us, the question is really about, we recognise the need for a broad suite of functional skills in the leaders of the future, as I think your report highlighted. But for us, it's more about how we create safe environments for our talent to make those transitions at the right points and early enough in their careers to give them skills across a wide variety of functions. I mean, clearly digital is critical, but for us, it's about so much more than that because, you know, the retail operations, the proximity with the customer, finance, we've really seen the value of those in all of our different MDs. And in fact, actually creating a high-performing leadership team, I think, is really what we're all about.
And are we seeing more skills from outside of sector come in and be utilised?
It depends on the function, I know we touched upon this briefly before the session. There are some areas of a luxury department store business where it's going to be hard to create credible succession. For example, luxury buying is a unique skill of its own. However, I think what we are trying to do as a business is identify emerging complementary skill sets that perhaps might not necessarily be found in traditional retail. So to give you a live example, in our omni-channel team in Selfridges & Co, we made a concerted effort to bring in an editorial specialist from traditional magazine industry in order to create some of that fantastic content that gives our customers reason to come back time and time again, not just necessarily to make a transactional purchase.
Okay. And Cassandra, from a startup and a disruptor perspective, what's your view on talent? How do you build talent within your organisation?
I guess, you know, to both your points, I think one of the things that on a personal level I face is that tension and that oscillation between that sort of very much entrepreneurial approach, keeping the pace and the momentum of our growth up, but then as the business scales and expands, making sure there's enough sort of managerial skill set in our senior management team so that we can start putting into place a lot more structure and process in the business that will, I guess, give us that framework to grow. Our attitude for recruitment has always been sort of high attitude over experience. That's not to say that we don't place a huge amount of value on experience, and especially as we grow and we become more this sort of awkward teenage SME size. But there's something to be said, especially at the beginning, for that sense of naivety. It gives us a lot of cut through. It allows us to approach the category in a slightly different way. And also, you know, to your point, putting different skill sets in different functions within the business. So making sure that we have someone that's highly commercial in our creative team, making sure that in our sales team there's someone that's very creative. We find that as an approach for our business has given us, I guess, a lot more breadth and a different perspective.
And Nigel, from your perspective, have you seen sort of lessons that we can take from smaller, more agile businesses, from disruptors in essence, as far as talent, culture, organisational design?
Yeah, broad question. What would I bring to the table? I mean, in organisation design, in a legacy business, that was debated very often and very thoroughly, where Argos landed was with its traditional functional executive, IT, digital, HR, operations, supply. We opted not to go for the revolution, but once we realized that success in delivering same-day delivery, I know Mark's not a fan of that in terms of Mr. MySpace, in terms of small items, large items, delivery, fast track in store, these propositions, they actually cut across. To execute them properly to the customer, they cut across the traditional functional boundaries. So we had some real tension and compromises in execution from the executive to the point where it mattered, which was the customer interface. And some of our brightest and best of our talent, as a lesson learned, were appointed into Tier 2 general manager roles in charge of the propositions that sat between the executive and the next layer down. Now that was some way through the Argos journey. Time will tell, or would have told, the degree of success there. But if you are, for millions of customers, putting in a groundbreaking proposition like same-day delivery, order by 6 p.m., delivery in your home by 10 p.m., that cuts across all your traditional interfaces, supply chain, distribution, in-store, IT, digital, and you have to have, we felt, general managers with accountability for the proposition, fighting the fight and challenging for the customer at the very highest level. So that's a lesson learned I would bring.
And Sarah, I think if we look at classical traditional retail, they've been very good at building individuals that are probably technical experts that grow and have more responsibility and then become general managers in some shape or form. But maybe not so good as growing leaders that are more rounded. What is your business doing around, with so many different types of groups, there's probably an opportunity to move people around and create leadership roles?
I think we are encouraging our senior leaders to make brave decisions, and we're trying to create safe environments for people to have different functional experiences, whether that be in their home market or in one of our international organizations. And I mean, a couple of ways in which you might consider doing that, or we have anyway, is rather than moving someone wholesale into a new business or into a brand new role in a functional area, we are looking at things like longer-term international secondments. We're looking at when a vacancy does arrive, should you consider taking a bit of a qualified risk on someone who is established within your business but in a different area, and appoint them on an interim basis. So I think we're trying to create environments that allow that breadth, and at the same time we complement that with, at a group level, we're working on the development of a lot of our executives as leaders. I was chatting to one of our directors yesterday in advance of this, and we were talking about how people actually describe great leaders, and he made a great point. He said, when you talk about someone you love working for, you don't say, oh, they're the best buyer I've ever met, or they can add like no one else in finance. It's about their passion and their gravitas and their ability to get people behind them. And I think we're very cognizant that that's something you have to build alongside a breadth of functional capability as well.
And Cassandra, for me, as a co-founder, as founder of a business, how do you make sure that you take talent and build that around the founder's view and vision, and that is instilled into the business?
I guess for a long time, especially in the first couple of years, there's that sort of control freak in you that wants to, they call it founder syndrome, and I think one of the best things that's happened to me in the past, I guess, 12 months is relinquishing some of that control and really, I guess, empowering the team more and more to, sort of, I guess, go with it and add their own momentum and pace to the business. And it's been the best thing that could have happened, because actually on a day-to-day level, they're far better placed to make judgment calls in their department than I am now. And so, yeah, I think, as we grow, I'll have to step further and further back from that. And just make sure that my time is much more future-facing and strategic rather than kind of, I guess, day-to-day management.
Okay. And Nigel, at Argos, did they bring in more entrepreneurial talent into the business?
Yes, absolutely. And I mentioned the half dozen proposition-based GMs. As I recall, not one of those individuals was from the traditional in-store operations route. So those individuals had entrepreneurialism, had collaboration, had technical capabilities that were pretty much against the grain. Only one of the half a dozen came from outside. So these were people who were on fast-track schemes who actually understood the business. So their chances of executing and challenging with credibility was that much more probably assured by that. Certainly, John Walden is one to take a risk. We have had a guy called Cal Patel on the executive board. Again, previously XI, but Best Buy. But Cal is an investor, entrepreneur of the last half dozen years. And Cal sat on that board. I sat on that board for 2 years as if this isn't a contradiction in terms, as an in-house disruptor. So a dyed-in-the-wool innovator and challenger and disruptor, and really would shake things up. So some very purposeful interventions around entrepreneurialism and some of the rare skills that were needed to disrupt and fight the inertia of a typical legacy business on a big transformation.
Okay, thank you. Well, I think we're running short on time, so I guess when we were planning this session, I think the key things to take away at the moment is there's never been more of an important time to think about leadership. There's never been a more important time to be brave around leadership choices, whether that means putting people with different disciplines into different areas or looking outside of sector, looking at entrepreneurs, looking at disruptors and bringing that talent into larger businesses as well. So I think it's a really interesting time for talent and leadership at the moment. Do we have time for any questions?
No.
Probably not, but people will. So, okay, thank you everyone. Thank you for the panel. Thank you.